Okay. Shavua Tov, everybody. Welcome back to Shmuel Bet. As you can see, we have a lovely new background, and this is all down to our friends Marcus and Chevi, who are helping me tidy things up on the YouTube channel, make things look a bit more attractive. And we'll be doing quite a bit more in terms of videos, short videos of just a minute and a half, attacking some difficult subjects. So watch out for those. Everything will be posted up on the Chelet WhatsApp group, and then they're going to help us get the message out and get as much coverage as we can for our Techelet message, which is to be an inspiring type of Judaism. Right, we're in chapter 8 of Shmuel Bet, and we spoke last time about David's reach. In other words, the extent of his kingdom, which extended north, northeast, east, southeast, and south. The only way he didn't go was west, for obvious reasons, because if he'd gone west, it'd have been in the Mediterranean Sea. And we had a map, and I'll see if I can show you that map. Where did I put the map? Hang on a second, there's the map. Let me see if I can share the map with you of David's campaigns. Let me try and share that with you now. Please let me know if you can see it. There you go.
Can see it.
Right, good, excellent. So you can see on this map here, this was the extent of David's reach all the way up to Damascus, which is Damascus, east into Jordan, Ammon, people of Ammon, bit further south, central Jordan, Moab, South Jordan and the Negev is Edom, and then west to the Mediterranean Sea into the area of the Pelishtim, the Philistines, and that's the Gaza and the coastal plain. What this map doesn't show you is it also, I need to add it on really, it also went up into Lebanon as far as Tyre, which is about where my pointer is now. And you can see it's a pretty comprehensive area that David was managed to conquer. And that's what we were talking about last week. So we're going to pick up the text. Let me just get the text up for you. We're going to pick up the text at verse 7 of chapter 8 in Shmuel Bet. And this is now going to be talking a little bit about, this pasuk at least, about the spoils of war. Now, we've spoken about the spoils of war in the past because we had, excuse me, we had the discussion about whether the soldiers, the combat soldiers, kept it all for themselves, which is what the soldiers wanted. And David said, no, you're not having that. The guys that are support troops at the back there that are looking after the base and doing the guarding and getting the meals ready and all that stuff, they are going to share in the spoils as well. And here we saw that we also saw that the halacha is that the king takes the first what? Can anybody remember? What share did the king take? Yes, Hannah?
First half.
The first half, that's right. We learned that a couple of chapters ago, that the king takes the first half and the second half goes to the soldiers. Now, what happens to that first half? All right, let me ask the question differently. What doesn't happen to that first half that the king takes?
The first half would go into the royal treasury, wouldn't it?
It would go into the royal treasury, correct. What do you mean exactly by that?
It would go to pay for all the expenses that the king has. in running
All right.
his household, in paying soldiers, whatever he's got to fork out money for.
Okay, correct. And it, where doesn't it go?
Into his own pocket.
Yeah, that's the point I was making. Doesn't go into his own pocket. How do we know it doesn't go into his own pocket, Michael?
It wouldn't be right.
Okay, how do we know it wouldn't be right? Where do we learn that it wouldn't be right? Oh, you do know, Michael. You definitely know. What is a king not allowed to have, Michael?
Too much wealth.
Yes, that's one of the three things, isn't it? What are the other two?
Horses and wives.
Horses, wives, and wealth. Yes, correct. So he's not allowed to have too much wealth. So if he was to keep taking half the spoils of every war, and we've just seen on that map how many different places David conquered, David would fall foul of the parashat, which is known as Parashat HaMelech, which we read in Parashat Shoftim 8 days ago. So, okay, now I'll ask you the question again, Michael. How do we know that David didn't do that? Or why do we think that David wouldn't have done that?
Because he's held up as the epitome of a king, of what a king should be.
That is true. And how do we know that? We know that from the Gemara Sanhedrin, don't we? With the number of
wives that he had.
Wives that he had, okay, which was
18.
18. And we said everyone's allowed to have 18 because David Amelech had 18. We also know, don't we, from last week's shiur, that what did he do to the horses?
He killed a load of them.
Didn't kill them. No, he didn't kill them.
No, he didn't.
Hobbled them.
He hamstrung them.
He hamstrung them. That's right. And what was the word that we used that I set you a challenge to use this word during the week?
Huff.
To huff. Yeah. Did anybody manage to use the word huffed with regard to horses this week? I mentioned it in the shiur yesterday afternoon, but I don't think that really counts. Yeah, he huffed them. And why did he huff these horses? Hamstring them is another way of saying it, because he wasn't allowed to have too many horses. So we know he didn't have too many wives. We know he didn't have too many horses. So it would make sense if he's going to keep those, then he's probably going to keep the other one as well. That's where I was coming from, to know David HaMelech is held up as the paradigm of the best king. And so we know that this money would not have gone in his back pocket. And in fact, just in case you wanted to be sure about this, we have verse 7. Jeffrey, if you would like to unmute yourself and read us verse 7, please. We're in chapter 8.
Yeah. David, that's 9, sorry. David took the golden shields of Hadad-ezer's servants and brought them to Jerusalem.
Okay, stop there. So you translated that as shields, golden shields. And my translation on the screen says quivers of gold. Let's look at the Hebrew word. Shiltei hazahav. Shiltei. That is a the form of that verb is where it connects it to somebody. What's the word I'm looking for, please? When it belongs to. It's I can't think of the word, but what is the root of that word? Possessive. Thank you, David. Possessive. It's my age, you know. Possessive. That's right. This is a possessive form of the noun. The root of that noun, David.
Control. Control.
Shelet. Yeah. Well, lishlot means to control, doesn't it? Correct. What is a shelet in modern Hebrew?
The sign. It's a
sign. A sign. Yeah. Now let's think about this bit of etymology because it's beautiful. Peter has said lishlot means to control. Okay. and a shelet is a sign. Okay, in what way are those two words, control and a sign, connected?
Well,
Well, a shield normally has a sign on it.
Okay, we'll come. That's the next question, Michael.
Oh, sorry.
So,
Yeah.
control and a sign. Control and a sign. Go on, Peter.
you do something.
Say that again.
There's an element of direction. It's directing you to.
Yes, correct. You have a sign that says keep left.
Yeah.
If you're in the UK and you're driving, right? Keep left. Or you have a sign that says no entry. That is telling you to do something. That's controlling your behavior. So a shelet is a sign. Lishlot is to control. Now, it's described in Geoffrey's art scroll as a shield. What have you got in your living nach,
Shield.
Michael? Shield as well. And we've got quiver. I'm just having a look what Rav Bazak's translation. He's got shield, actually. Right. So now then, Michael has already told us that a shield has a sign on it. So maybe that's a connection there. So that's a possibility. But there is a reference in Shir Hashirim, in the reference in Shir Hashirim to Hamagen, the armor of Shilteh, the mighty men. So it seems that Shelet can be a shield. Where have we gone here? Why have we gone up to that thing? I don't know. Lost the screen. Where have you gone?
Wow.
There you are. Right. Now we're back.
Yes.
Right. So he took the shields of gold that were on the servants of Hadadezer, and he brought them to Yerushalayim. Okay, he brought them to Yerushalayim. What does that mean? He brought them to Yerushalayim.
We brought them
What
to
does it mean?
Jerusalem.
Yeah, it means he brought them, as you said in the beginning, Hannah. He brought them to the royal coffers, not to his own back pocket. So he's brought them into the royal coffers, which is where they needed to be. Now, I want you to have a look. I want you to have a look, please, to the parallel chapter in Divrei Hayamim. I know Michael loves a good bit of Divrei Hayamim. It is chapter 18. I'll put it on the screen for you there. And this the equivalent pasuk there is verse 7. And David took the golden quivers that were on Hadadezer's servants and brought them to Jerusalem. Now, you'll see that this name Hadadezer is mentioned here and also in our chapter there, in the same thing there, Hadadezer. Okay, now what we want to look about is this name Hadadezer. And in order to do that, I want you to look in our chapter. Let's just skip a couple of psukim and go to verse 10, Geoffrey, please. In chapter 8 of
so
Shmuel.
Toy sent his son Joram to King David to greet him and to wish him well for having fought and defeated Hadaezer. For Hadaezer was a battle foe of Toy. In his hand were silver vessels, gold vessels, and copper vessels.
Stop there. So this fellow Toy had a son who he sent to King David. And what was his name, this son?
Yoram.
Joram. Okay, Joram. Remember that name, Joram. Now let's go to the parallel chapter in Divrei Hayamim and have a look at verse 9 and 10 on the screen for me, Geoffrey, please.
And Toi, the king of Hamath, heard that David had defeated all the army of Hadaezer, the king of Zobah. And he sent Hadoram, his son, to King David to greet him and to bless him.
Stop
because he
there.
had-
So what was his son's name?
Hadoram. Hadoram.
Hadoram. Hadoram. And in our chapter, the same chap is called
Joram.
Yoram. So what's going on here? How come in Shmuel Bet, this fellow is called Yoram, and in Divrei Ayamim, he's called Hadoram?
It's very similar. It's just the first three letters. If you replace them with a Y, it's Yoram.
Correct. So the Ram bit is the same. So why has Yo changed to Hado? Exactly that question, Michael. Now, you won't know this unless you know it. I certainly did not know it. And it is really interesting. Apparently, and I am I think I got this from Rav Bazak. I can't remember whether I got it from Rav Bazak or from the Koren now, because I was reading both of them last night at the same time. I can't remember where I got what from what. But it seems that Hado is a pagan god. Right? Hado is a pagan god. And so this fellow Toi was not a Jew, and he called his son Hadoram. Ram means, what does Ram mean? Ramat Hagolan. High, elevate.
Yeah, Ram,
So
yeah.
Hadoram means the god Hado is high. And it seems that the author of Shmuel Bet didn't like that and therefore changed it to Yoram. What is Yo?
Yeah, it's God, yeah.
Yo is God's name, one of God's names. So it seems that there was a little bit of jiggery-pokery going along with the names here. Hado is a name of a god. Now, that was mildly interesting to me. What was super interesting to me is have a look at verse 8, 7 and 8 in our chapter, Jeffrey, in chapter 8.
David took the golden shield of Hadaezer's servants and brought them to Jerusalem, and from Betah and Berothai, cities of Hadaezer, King David took a great deal of copper.
Right, so who is the king here? What's his name?
Hadad.
Hadaezer.
Hadadezer. Now we've got that Hado again there, haven't we? Now then, what would you get if you did the same monkey business with the name that we did with Hadoram, and we changed the Hado to Hashem's name instead of this pagan name? What would you get if you changed Hadadezer and took off the Hado and replaced it with God's name?
Yes, sir.
Oh,
Who
Eliezer.
said Eliezer?
Anne.
Anne. Kol hakavod, Anne. Eliezer. Eli is one of God's names, right? So Hadadezer is the equivalent of Eliezer. Now, I found that fascinating, that the Hadadezer is the same name as Eliezer. Now then, where did our famous Eliezer, who was Eliezer in the Torah, first of all?
Servant of Abraham.
Servant of Abraham. And where did he come from, Michael?
Ah.
Aram Naharaim.
No, he did not come from Aram Naharaim. Abraham came from Aram Naharaim. Eliezer came from a different place. Ivor, where did Eliezer come from?
Achim.
Come on, David, put us out of our misery.
Damascus.
Damasek Eliezer, he's referred to as Damasek Eliezer in the Torah. Damasek Eliezer. So where did Eliezer come from?
Damascus.
Damasek. So Eliezer, the Torah has changed his name almost certainly. his name would have been probably Hadadezer. Only the Torah, like we didn't want Hadoram and we've got Yoram instead, the Torah would not have wanted to have Hadadezer and therefore changed his name to Eliezer. So our famous Eliezer, right? Think about this. All those Eliezers that you know, right, who are named Eliezer, are probably named in part at least after Hadadezer. I mean, it's an almost delicious thought, really. I just thought this was a fascinating piece of information that I had no idea about, and I'm very grateful to whichever one it was that where I read it. I think it's a brilliant piece of etymology there. Here it is. It's actually Rav Bazak. I'll read it to you exactly the paragraph. It's only one paragraph. I'll read you the paragraph he wrote. The parallel verse in Divrei Aramim reads, he sent Hadoram his son. In our book, the idolatrous name Hado, which parallels Hadad, is replaced by the name of God of Israel. It's possible that this replacement is part of the approach of the redactor of the book of Shmuel to omit idolatrous names, and he gives another example. Esh Baal, we change to Ish Boshet. Yeru Baal, we turn to Yeru Boshet. Or it is possible that Toi himself changed the name of his son in honor of David. The name Hadadezer also appears in the Torah in its Hebrew form in the name of Eliezer, who was also from Damascus. That's brilliant. I think that's brilliant. Right. Okay. Wonderful. So that's something that I'm pretty sure that none of us would have worked out for ourselves. Let's go on. So verse 8, Jeffrey has just read. Let's read it again and concentrate not on the names, but on what was going on in the Pasuk itself. Verse 8 and 9 and 10, please.
And from Beta and Berothai, cities of Hadaezer, King David took a great deal of copper. Toi, king of Hamath, heard that David had struck down the entire army of Hadaezer. So Toi sent his son Joram to King David to greet him and to wish him well for having fought and defeated Hadaezer. For Hadaezer was a battle foe of Toi. In his hand were silver vessels, gold vessels, and copper vessels. King David consecrated them also unto Hashem, along with the silver and gold of all the nations he had conquered, which he had already consecrated, from Aram, from Moab, from the children of Ammon, from the Philistines, from Amalek, and from the spoils of Hadaezer, son of Rehob, king of Zobah.
Right, let's stop there. So you can see that very clearly. Verse 11 tells these also the King David dedicated to Hashem. Again, another indication he can keep it for himself. Now then, what we do find, which is very interesting, is what happened to all of this spoil. What happened to all this gold and silver and copper?
Solomon had it for the temple
Very good. How do you know that, Jackie?
because in Freemasonry, I won't go into it now. It's to do with Freemasonry.
All right. And how do Freemasons know that Solomon used this particular spoils that David, his father, got for the building of the temple? That's what I'm interested in. What happened to this particular spoils? And you're right. The answer you gave is absolutely right. I want to know how you know that. And if you want to move your finger from in front of your camera, we'll be able to see the rest of your face. Right, that's it. Thank you. So how do you know? You're absolutely right. But how do your friends in the Freemasons know that it was this particular spoil? And I'm going to ask Michael Kraus this question if you can't answer it. Come on, Michael. What question do I always ask you, and what questions answers you always give me?
Divrei Yamim.
Divrei Hayamim tells us exactly. I'm going to show you exactly what happened in Divrei Hayamim. Let's go to chapter 8 of Divrei Hayamim. Chapter 18 of Divrei Hayamim. And have a look at verse 8 please, on the screen, Jeffrey, if you wouldn't mind reading it for me.
And Tom, and from Tibhath and from Kun, cities of
אתי
Hadad.
ויה. אמן. אמן.
לא נכנסתי
Sorry.
לעניינים.
One
Just
second,
have to-
let's just mute Hannah. Right, go on, Jeffrey.
And from Tibhath and from Kun, cities of Adaezer, David took huge quantities of copper, from which Solomon made the copper sea and the pillars and the copper vessels.
There you go. It says it directly. From which Shlomo made the copper sea. What's the copper sea? Yam HaNachoshet. What's that referring to, do you think? The copper sea? What's in the
Well,
sea?
It's probably like a reservoir, isn't it? It's probably a big
Well,
vessel to hold
I think
water.
it's referring to the kior, the laver, the bowl that was used to wash the kohanim, because that was definitely made out of copper. So in the Mishkan, what was it made out of? What was the one that was in the Mishkan made out of? Can anyone remember the Midrash that tells us what the copper
I think it was
basin?
gold.
The mirrors of the women who
Yes,
Egypt.
Jackie, that's correct. The mirrors of the women were made out of shiny copper, and they used those mirrors to do what, Jackie?
to entice their husbands to have sex with them.
That's right. Yes, you don't need to be so explicit.
Sorry.
This is a family shield.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, no, I'm only kidding. I'm only kidding. They used the mirrors to put their tutty on, so that they would be attractive to their menfolk, and thereby continue the line of the Jewish people. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu, as it were, instructed Moshe to use those mirrors because they were holy. And it's an important thing, this, because it shows you that the act of intimacy between man and woman is not something that we should be. We don't believe, like the Christians, that it's something evil and disgusting. It's something beautiful and holy. So much so that the mirrors that were used in that way were used to make the kior. And what was that kior used for, Jackie? That copper laver that they put the water in, what was it specifically used for?
To wash the hands. Of
Wash the
Levine.
hands. Yes, and the feet. And what does that do?
So you can dust them.
Yeah, because he needs to be purified.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a purification process. So the message is very clear. It's a sort of anti-Christian message, really, that sexual relations between man and women are not something to be thought of as dirty. On the contrary, it's something holy and beautiful. And in fact, the very vessel that was used to purify the kohanim before they did their avodah was made from those things. Now, in the Beit Mikdash, we're told very clearly on the screen there, Divrei Hayamim, chapter 18, says that Shlomo used the stuff that David, the spoils that David took for this purpose. And so that's an important point, which is missing from Shmuel Bet. Let's go to Shmuel Bet again. And it doesn't, I'll save you the bother. It doesn't say that David gave them to Shlomo to use for the temple. Now, the obvious question is, why not?
It would sound a little bit bad that they used the spoils, unholy spoils, to build a temple or for the temple.
Why do you think you call them unholy?
Because it came from nations that they defeated, not God-fearing, idol worshippers.
Okay. So they've got intrinsic unholiness, impurity in them because they've come from. That's a fair point. That is a fair point. For example, it happens quite often that churches become decommissioned, if that's the word. Churches become decommissioned from being churches, and quite often you have burgeoning Jewish communities that purchased the building to be used as a shul. Jeffrey, am I not correct in that that's what Moor Lane was once a church?
It was some sort of, yes, it was. And there was Leicester Road.
Leicester Road was a church, yes.
And quite a few on Cheetham Hill Road were also
originally churches.
Yeah.
So, and there's one in Prestwich on the corner of Sedgley Park Road there. It used to be the Methodist Church. It's now a Haredi shul. And there are some opinions that say, and this is why I'm telling you this, because Michael's point's a fair point. There are some opinions that say you can never decommission a place of idol worship and turn it into a shul. And so, for example, the one I just mentioned in Prestwich, near where I used to live, it's a very Haredi shul now. They use the church itself as the hall, and they daven in what was the church hall, not the church. Dafka, because they don't want the davening to be in that place.
I actually thought I'm sorry, Johnny. I thought in that particular building they actually pulled down half of it and rebuilt it as a shul.
Don't think so. Not in the Methodist church there. I don't think so. I think they clad it, but I don't think they. Maybe they have now, but certainly when they first bought it, they davened in the hall and not in the shul dafka.
Johnny, very
strange. One sec, Jackie. One sec. So Michael's point that maybe it's not mentioned here because it had intrinsic unholiness may be a fair point, but it was used according to Divrei Hayamim. So there must be a different reason why it wasn't mentioned here and it is mentioned there, which we'll come back to. Yes, Jackie.
Only I was going to say that in the Torah, when it gives a list of sacrifices that people are supposed to bring when they've done something wrong, the slightest blemish, it wasn't suitable. So here is these things surely were completely blemished.
They would be considered to be blemished. That's talking about animals, of course. You're right. But of course, we have a similar sort of thing today. There is a halacha in the Torah about yayin nesech. What is yayin nesech?
Yeah, wine that a goy has had some handled.
No,
sacrilegious wine.
It's used for for holy purposes, non-Jewish purposes, or
correct. Sacramental, I think somebody just said.
Oh,
was that you, Michael?
I said sacrilegious, but never mind.
Sacrilegious. Well, it is sacrilegious if we use it. You're right, but I think you meant sacramental.
Yeah.
So yayin nesech, and I'll come back to you in a minute, Hannah, because what you've said is a different halacha. Yayin nesech is wine which has been used for non-Jewish and in particular avodah zarah, idol worship, sacramental purposes. So, for example, wine of the communion. I have never done it. Proud to say, I guess. But Catholics take communion, I understand, and they get a little bit of wine and they get a little bit of wafer or something like that, I understand. But there is wine used in this process, in this service of communion. That would be considered yayin nesech. That would be considered wine used for sacramental purposes, and we are not allowed to use it, nor are we allowed to have any benefit from it. Okay? And that is yayin nesech. What Hannah is referring to, which is wine which has been handled by a non-Jew, is called something different. Anybody know what that's called? That is called, David, do you know what that's called?
Pagam.
It's called stam yenam. Stam yenam. Pagam is something different. Stam yenam, which literally means just their wine. And it means their wine. And it's the reason it says stam in front of it is to differentiate it from Yain Nesech. Yain Nesech is a Torah law. The libation wine, the sacramental wine, is a Torah law that we are not allowed to use. Stam Yainam means their regular wine, i.e. wine that belongs to a non-Jew or has been touched by a non-Jew, which is not for sacramental purposes. Because if it was for sacramental purposes, it would be considered to be Yain Nesech. Let me just
But you're
switch
not
my
allowed
phone
to
off.
use
Sorry
that
about this.
either.
Now,
You're not allowed
difference-
to use that either.
Okay, there's a big difference. Where in the Torah does it tell you about Stam Yainam?
I don't know.
You're right, it doesn't. It's a derabanan. It's a derabanan. It's not a deoraita. It's a completely different halacha. A completely different halacha. Stam Yain Nesech is a law which is to make sure that we don't use anything which is been used for avodah zarah. And this is Michael's point about this stuff that's come from the other nations. Correct, Michael? It's tainted in your explanation. That's Yain Nesech. Stam Yainam was brought in by the Rabbanan. It's a rabbinic law, and it was brought in order to prevent fraternization between Jews and non-Jews. It was brought in because what will happen if you sit around and drink wine with non-Jewish folk, according to the rabbis, the bottom line, the end of the story is that you will have intermarriage. Your children will marry their children, and it won't end well. So this was a time when they were very fearful of intermarriage between the locals and the Jews. And it was also at a time when the Jews had a big stake in the publican industry. Jews were publicans. They owned inns. Why did they own inns?
My grandfather did. My grandfather did in Poland. He had an inn.
Why did they own inns, Hannah?
Because they weren't allowed to work the land or do other things.
Yeah,
so
there were very, very few. You're right. There were very few things they were allowed to do. They were allowed to be money lenders at certain times, anyway, and they were allowed to own pubs. So they owned pubs, and so what happened was you'd have all sorts of goyim coming into the pub.
It's Philip.
Yeah, sorry. I'm sorry.
So you'd have all sorts of people coming into the pub, and you'd sit down, and you know what happens when you have a bit of wine inside you, the tongue gets a bit loose, and etc., etc. And before you know it, you've betrothed your daughter to the local Poritz's son, right? And that is where Stam Yainam came in. It was a rabbinic law to prevent fraternization, completely different to Yain Nesech. How did we get onto that? Because we were talking about Michael's very sensible suggestion that the reason it's not in Shmuel Bet was because this stuff was somehow or other tainted. It must have got untainted in somehow. And how might it got untainted? I'll ask you that in a second. It must have got untainted because Shlomo HaMelech, according to Divrei Hayamim, used it for the holy vessels. Now then, this is not wine, so we're not talking about drinking. How could these vessels, Michael, which you quite rightly say might have had some kind of tainting on them, how could you untaint them?
Easy.
There must be ways of koshering those particular items.
Okay, how might that be? You could boil it. You put it in a mikvah. You toivel it, right? What do you do when you buy a new pot, a new pan? Let's say you buy a new pan. You didn't. Jackie, you were too fast on the buzzer there, right? Because you have to wait till the end of the question before you answer. Okay. What do you do if you buy a new pan from a Jew?
You don't have to do anything.
You still toivel it.
No, you don't toivel it. Hannah is correct. You can straight away use it for cooking. If you buy a vessel that has been made by a non-Jew or has been sold by a non-Jew,
That's what I meant.
then you need, I know that's what you meant, but I was catching you out with the question. It's all part of the fun. So we have, so the whole reason why we have Tvilat Kelim is for the reason that Michael has highlighted to us. Because for sure this stuff would have been tainted. But Shlomo probably toiveled the whole lot in the mikveh, said al Tvilat Kelim, and has now removed, as it were, that impurity. Same way as we, if we had a Bet Mikdash today and we wanted to bring a korban and we were tamei mate, we are impure. How do we get unimpure? We go to the mikveh and we toivel.
But wait a second. I'm not comfortable with all this. First of all, if things have been used for avodah zarah, one would assume that they would need a greater level of kashering. For Pesach, you can't just toivel something. It has to go to Hagalah. You have to put it in boiling water for whatever is nivla, will come back out again. So
okay, so we're mixing our metaphors here. We're mixing our metaphors. You're talking about kashrut, and I'm talking about tum'ah. You're talking about a vessel that's been cooked with some treifa ingredient. You're absolutely right. Or for Pesach, that we're mixing our metaphors again, we're talking about chametz. Here, we're talking about golden shields. Nobody has eaten chaza off their golden shield. It's an instrument of war. Okay, so it doesn't need Hagalah, and it doesn't need any of those things because it's not got any bliah. It's not absorbed any trephus. Okay, so you're absolutely right with regard to kashrus. We can't just toivel it in a mikveh. We've got to kasher it first. That's why I didn't use the word kasher. I used the word toivel. Here we're talking about stuff that is impure. It's got tum'ah, or potentially. We don't even know if it's got tum'ah, and we certainly don't know that it's been used for avodah zarah. Might just have been a shield. So it's safek avodah zarah. I'll give you that, and it's safek tum'ah. And so therefore,
also,
one sec. And therefore, there must have been some kind of process of purification before Shlomo HaMelech used it in the Bet Mikdash. And I would suggest to you that that was probably Tvilat Kelim. And what's interesting is that it is an example of something that 3,000 years later, we're still doing. We do Tvilat Kelim when we have a keli. We have a vessel that has been through the hands of a non-Jew who may have used it for some kind of impure purpose. Then we get rid of that potential impurity by Tvilat Kelim. Yes, Hannah?
the other thing that keeps coming into my mind is that in terms of using a building that was once a church to convert it to a synagogue and whatever, wouldn't you go to, I can't remember all of the limitations put on Am Yisrael when they came into the land. Yeah, but we had to chop down trees that had been used for avodah zarah, and if you have a nega in the house, you've got to take it down, you've got to break it out. And wouldn't you go there and look to see what you could do or what you couldn't do with a building that had been used as a church?
Yeah, okay. Very fair point. I'm not sure that the nega is relevant because that was tzorat. Let's leave that one aside. But the first part, we were enjoined to destroy all of their altars, matzevotehem, to shabeirun, and all that stuff. David will give us the exact wording. You've got to burn down their Asherah trees and all those things which were to do with that. You're absolutely right. A couple of points on that. Number one, that was what is called a horat sha'at. That was an instruction just for when we went into Canaan, for those 7 nations. In the same way is that we were told by the Torah that when you go into the land, if a distant city comes to war with you, or you want to go and war with a distant city, you have to try and make peace with them first, which is not the case with the 7 nations. The 7 nations that we conquered right at the beginning were a different case. So we don't have to, if we did, we'd have to, if what I'm saying is not correct, we would have had to have knocked down every church and mosque in Eretz Israel when we returned in 1948. So that was a horat sha'at. That's number 1. Number 2, and this is an important distinction, and that is that there is a whole discussion about what is avodah zarah and what is not avodah zarah. So, for example, everybody is agreed that Islam is not avodah zarah. Everybody is agreed that Buddhism is avodah zarah. There is a machloket, there is a discussion and a disagreement amongst the poskim, amongst the halachic decisors, as to whether Christianity, and which brand of Christianity, Catholicism, Protestantism, and all the other isms that there are, whether they are or they are not avodah zarah. And so, for example, taking the Methodist Church, which I was referring to earlier on, according to the vast majority of poskim, that would not be considered to be avodah zarah. It's not correct. We can't use their stuff. I think probably, Hannah, that if we were to take over a Buddhist temple, I think there would be a lot more problems with using the building and using stuff there than a church, for the reason that we've just said. A mosque, on the other hand, is not avodah zarah. Now, and I guess, I mean, this isn't possible, of course, but I guess if you could have taken the church and dumped it in the mikveh, right? I know obviously this is theoretical, it's not possible, but if you could do that, then that would probably be the equivalent of purifying it. So certainly that shul that I was talking to you about, which was a very Haredi shul, did not want to use the church itself at all. Whether they were allowed to al pi halacha or not, they took upon themselves the stringency not to. The one in Moore Lane, which is a Sephardi shul that Jeffrey and I were talking about earlier on, they do daven in what was the church building. You can see it. I was there. I davened Shabbat Mincha there 2 weeks ago. And you actually are inside the shul building itself. So, you know, and they are extremely religious folk. And I'm sure it's completely al pi halacha. So there's definitely different interpretations, lakula and lachumra. But it's an interesting idea. Yes, Ivor.
I think you'll find that today with the new Islamism, Islamic Jihad, this is totally another world. The original Quran, which said that Allah was effectively our God, it's based on the Old Testament, and Muhammad. But once the Jews rejected Muhammad, we became the infidels who had to be destroyed, the same as everybody else who didn't accept Muhammad. So today, the Islam, I think it's a dangerous thing to say that it's not any more idol worship. It's gone beyond idol worship. It's not just genocidal, it's completely...
I think the two things are not mutually exclusive. We're talking al pi halacha, what constitutes avodah zarah.
Halacha has to change.
Okay. Halacha is dynamic, and
it may well be. I mean,
yeah. I don't think you'll find any posek who says that Islam's a great idea, or that fundamental Islamism is a great idea. Whether it constitutes al pi haTorah, whether it constitutes avodah zarah, I'm doubtful, because I don't think they actually worship like the Buddhists do. They worship a Buddha. But I'm not an expert on these things. But we're agreed, Ivor. It's not a great idea, and we should try and avoid it. Right,
Jonathan.
Yes.
Going back to Michael's thing about kushering, and you're saying in the mikvah, if you take metal objects like we do at Pesach, we actually run fire over them. So if Solomon melts them all, then that would kosher them.
Again, we're mixing our metaphors here. We kasher things by putting fire through them because of what Hannah said, because it's had trefa things inside it. We're here talking about shields, which have not had any trephus in it. But, I mean, as far as I understand, in order to make a vessel which is potentially impure pure, you need to put it in the mikveh. After that, you melt it down and make your whatever you're making with it. That's, you know, better still, if you like. But I think the mikveh is the key.
That there's precedent for, because that is what Moses did with the golden calf. He melted it, he ground it down.
But did he use it for a holy purpose thereafter?
Yes, they put it was used to put in the water to make people tahor again, and it was also used for the water for the sotah. It was from water put in that water too.
No. I think you're mixing your metaphors a little. The sotah had Hashem's name written out and ground up and put in the water. That was the...
Also, but I think it was the water was from the water that, you know, when we burn the calf and, you know, and everything.
Well, I don't know enough to say you're wrong, but my gut is that you're not right. Let's put it that way. I will look it up.
Also,
David, hang on one sec. David's got something to say. David?
Yeah, I think what you're referring to, Hannah, is the material came from the ground of the Mishkan, and it was the dust from the floor of the Mishkan was mixed together with the parchment of the sotah with water.
Maybe.
But I think Hannah may be correct. The origins of Tvilat Kelim are from Parashat Matot, the war with Midian, and I think the Torah says there that first of all you put things through fire to take out the tumah, and any material that will be destroyed by fire, then you use water for.
Okay, I accept that, but are we talking about their tum'ah, or are we talking about trephus?
No, tum'ah. This is the spoils of war.
Spoils of war. Okay, so the process would be a dual process then.
Asher lo yavo va'esh ta'aviru b'mayim v'taher. That's what the Torah says. Okay,
fine, excellent. So we've got a precedent there in the Torah itself for what to undo Michael's problem. But I still haven't had an answer to my question, which is, why is it not mentioned in Shmuel Bet that Shlomo used them, having done all what he needed to do to process it? Why is it not mentioned in Shmuel Bet, but it is mentioned in Divrei Hayamim?
Because we don't deal with Shlomo in Shmuel Bet. We only deal with the end, up to the end of David.
Okay, that's a fairly logical answer.
If it's not in Melachim, then maybe we can ask the question.
Okay, as far as I know, let's pretend it's not in Malachim because I haven't checked.
I think it's just that it's pasnich, basically, to put it in there because it just doesn't feel right. Not necessarily that it's wrong, but it just doesn't feel right, and therefore anything, as you said before, it's been Shmuel Bet has been sanitized, and that is one way of sanitizing it.
I think that all of that is right, and I think Hannah's right as well. And I'll tell you how I would put it all together. We did have a machloket, didn't we, a week or two ago, as to why David was not allowed to build the Bet Mikdash. Remember our previous chapter 7, we spent a long time on that. David says to the prophet, whose name was?
Nathan.
Good, Natan, yeah. He says, I want to build a Beit HaMikdash. And what does Natan say?
Sure, go ahead.
Good idea. And then Hashem says,
No.
no. And what reason are we given in Shmuel Bet for David not being allowed to do the Beit Mikdash?
His violence?
No.
No.
In
He has
Shmuel
blood
Bet.
on his hands. He has blood on his hands. It will be built.
You will not find any blood on his hands mentioned in Shmuel Bet, chapter 7.
I think it was his relations with Bathsheba.
No, he hasn't had them yet. That's in chapter 12. I'll tell you the answer was quite simple. If you recall, it wasn't the right time. It had to be when everything was settled around him, Vishavtem Betach, and they're sitting in security. The reason given in Shmuel Bet 7, I'll show it to you in case you think I'm making it all up.
No, we remember.
Let me show you the thing. Let me go on to share the screen again, the last couple of minutes. There it is. We can see here. He says, when your days are finished, verse 12. Oh, you can do the work, Jeffrey. 12, please.
When your days are finished and shall lie with your forefathers, then I will raise up your seed that shall proceed from your body after you, and I will establish his kingdom. He shall build a house for my name, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever.
Full stop. There you go. It's not your time. It's not the right time. And that was the thing. Now, we spent a long time comparing that to Divrei Hayamim, where it says that the reason that David wasn't allowed to do it was because
he had blood on his hands.
He had blood on his hands, because he was a man of war. But who said that? Not Natan, the prophet, in the name of Hashem. David said it. David said about himself, I was not allowed to do it because I have blood on my hands. Now, the reason, therefore, may be that the reason that we, in our chapter here, don't mention that David's spoils of war were to go to the Beit Mikdash was exactly because of what Hannah and Michael said combined. It's just not the right time. We're not talking about Shlomo Melech here. It's not the time of the Beit Mikdash. And this is all to do with David's wars. It's nothing to do with the Beit Mikdash. However, when it gets to Divrei Hayamim, by telling us that Shlomo used David's spoils of war, it is connecting David to the Beit Mikdash. In other words, it's saying, you, David, were not allowed to build it because you were a man of war, you had blood on your hands. However, you are a partner in this. Your spoils of war were used for the holy vessels, having been purified through Aish, through Mayim, however way we did it, all of those things. You are connected with it. Divrei Hayamim, of course, is exactly what it says. It's chronicles. It's giving us the full picture. It's standing back. It's zooming out of Jewish history, whereas Shmuel Bet, we're right in the picture. And so it doesn't fit. It's not the right place for it. And so it's not mentioned here. And I think it's really interesting that this whole idea, and I know Michael Krauss loves this idea here, this whole idea of having a Divrei Hayamim to compare with, and the two stories, which sometimes are in parallel and sometimes are not, what you learn from it not being in parallel is quite illuminating, because you can get under the surface of the original story. And I think that's what we've seen today. So we're out of time. I'll just summarize. Yes, go on, Hannah.
There's also another, well, two things. There's also another reason why possibly it's there with Shlomo, because Shlomo is later criticized for amassing money, wealth. and he taxes the people and everything. And maybe it's also there to show that he didn't take the spoils of war that David had received. He used those for the Bet Mikdash. That's something else. So it's a point for Shlomo. And just a piece of trivia. The first time I came to Israel in 1967, in all of Israel, there was one church. There were mosques, but there was only one church.
Really?
Hello?
That can't be true.
What about all them churches in Bethlehem and all that
No, and
stuff?
what about
Except for
in
Jerusalem.
Tiberia,
Except
in
for
Tiberia
Jerusalem.
and
Yeah.
the Galil, their places
There
crawling with them.
No, we were told at the time
Well, you were told
that
wrong.
outside of Jerusalem, well,
What about Bethlehem?
that there was one church, and it was somewhere near Kfar Saba or wherever.
Is there a famous church, the Church of Nazareth?
Nazareth, there was
Nazareth.
bloody places
And
crawling with
Karen,
them.
it's not correct.
No.
Tiberia.
I stand corrected. I stand corrected. I
Hannah,
bow
just-
to everybody else.
Hannah has some homework now. Hannah, defend your position next week, please. Right, let's just.
I stand corrected.
You're
Johnny,
Let's
sitting.
just.
Oh, by the way, the big church in Nazareth, one of the Holy Ascension or something there, wasn't built yet.
There
They
was
were
Okay.
only starting the
there
building.
for 1,500 years, 1,600
you know what?
years, the churches
You know
there.
what? Let's worry about shuls. Let them worry about churches.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Johnny.
Let me just,
corrected.
before we finish, one second. I want to pick up on what Hannah said, the first part of what Hannah said, which is important. Hannah said that this is perhaps a positive for Shlomo, that he used those spoils of war for the Bet Mikdash and didn't keep them for himself. Now, it just shows you how two different people can view the same thing in completely the opposite way. Hannah is obviously a much more positive thinking person than I am, because as she was speaking, I thought that what she was going to say and what I would have said is that this is a contrast showing how good David was, that he did not take the money for himself. And it was, if you like, showing Shlomo up that he took all the money up that he got in and became super wealthy himself. So I saw it as a negative contrast to Shlomo to David, and Hannah saw that as a positive for Shlomo, and I think that speaks volumes about people's personalities. And I shall say no more. Yes, Ivor, to finish.
Just going back to a short story about the Jewish inns with the innkeepers with the Jews. I remember hearing from my father, Rosh Shalom, from Riga, Bichlal in Latvia. The early Hasidim, they were the itinerant travelers that used to travel around the country, hidden, trying to discover other Jews, whatever. So they once turned up at an inn, and they said to the innkeeper, who was employed by the landowner, the non-Jewish landowner, "Tell me, you've got a problem here. You live, there are no Jews anywhere near you. You're here with your wife, your kids. What do you do for a shiloh when you have a question for the rabbi?" "Oh," he says, "very interesting. We had a case last week." He says, "My wife was carrying the big bowl of soup for Shabbos across the front of the bar, and one of the goyim, a piece of meat fell off his sandwich into the soup." So they said, "What did you paskin?" He says, "Tos goy mutter." A rabbinic observation that when a goy makes a mistake, it's mutter. Tos goy mutter.
Interesting. Interesting. Okay. I don't know what to make of that, really, but I'm sure there are
Jews will
hundreds
always find a solution to every problem.
yeah.
Whenever lost.
It was probably bottled with shishim anyway, so it was probably okay.
Also.
Right. Okay. Let's stop the recording, I think, right now.